Hello, old Darren here. Thank you for joining me today. Lovely to have you. Today's story is titled My House in Flames. This is a part 2 to a previous video I uploaded. If you haven't seen the first, I'll link it here. Now then, let's get into it, shall we? I glanced out of the window, trying to make out the woodland outside, through the rain pouring down the panes. This has become habitual for me now. Around every 15 minutes I subconsciously check the tree line. It has been 2 years now since my first encounter, and my life has changed dramatically. I keep a loaded gun with me at all times, although I am not sure how much it will help me. I cannot enter a deep state of sleep anymore. A part of my brain stays awake at all times, listening for danger. The creature has been following me since we first met deep in the woods, a memory that still haunts my dreams. Sometimes waking up in terror, sweating, I could swear I can smell its putrid odor. I have been told that the creature is a skinwalker, a creature of Native American lore often thought of as a witch. They are known to disguise themselves as an animal in order to get close to the people that they wish to harm. In my case, the abomination manifested itself as a deer, although its disguise was poor, a rotten deer carcass walking on its hind legs, its neck broken and hanging to one side. In the 2 years since then, I have had 4 encounters with this creature. But this story is about this night. Each encounter has been when I am alone. The sight and smell of the creature has filled me with terror like I have never felt before. I live alone in a cottage near a woodland. The trees border my property, and there is a small wire fence separating me from the woods. I glanced at the clock. 2:34 a.m. It's around this time I feel the most alone and vulnerable. About this time, it usually shows up. I opened the window to see if I could see through the rain. The sound of the downpour filled my living room. Outside it seemed quiet, the noise of the rain hitting the trees the only sound. It was then I saw the shadow. It stood still in the tree line, the only object not swaying in the wind. My stomach dropped, my heart beating faster. The familiar terror was creeping back into me. I slowly and quietly closed the window and locked it. I then circled my house, checking that all of the doors and windows were locked up tight. I loaded my pistol and took off the safety. I've read that guns cannot hurt a skinwalker, and I have never been able to get a shot off at it before, but it made me feel somewhat safer anyway. I turned off the lights and looked back through the window. The shadow was gone. I looked around frantically for any signs of movement within the trees. It was then that a loud, slow, rhythmic banging on the back door started. The knocks were heavy, rattling the door on its hinges. I let out a small yelp, unable to keep it in. I ducked down below the windows and crawled on all fours to the back door. The banging seemed louder, each knock jarring my mind a little further. I took aim at the door and pulled back the hammer. A pain spread through my chest, and I realized that I had been holding my breath. I took in a large breath and choked on the putrid smell of rotten deer flesh. An all too familiar smell now. I gagged, and as I did so, the banging stopped. The cottage seemed deathly quiet. The rain had stopped abruptly, further emphasizing the silence. There was a loud noise outside the kitchen window. I turned to look and carefully stood up and peeked out of the window. A couple of smashed roof tiles lay on the ground. It was on the roof. The fear was too much. I expected it to get easier each time, but in actuality, each encounter, the terror got worse and worse. I started sobbing quietly. I thought about this thing following me for the rest of my life. The thought was unbearable. I heard a window pane break upstairs. It was inside. I heard its heavy footsteps through the ceiling. It was searching through the rooms upstairs. It wouldn't be long now before it found me curled up on the kitchen floor, sobbing to myself. I looked at the loaded gun. The stairs creaked. It was heading downstairs. The handle of the door leading from the stairs turned. I raised my pistol, the door flew open, and there it stood, its smell enveloping me. It was wearing the same deer, for 2 years the same animal in the same state of decay, walking on its hind legs, its front legs hanging at its side, its head hanging to its left side. The sockets where its eyes were glowed red. The first time I believed it to be a reflection from my campfire, but every time its eyes had the same dull red glow. I meant to fire 5 of my 6 shots at the creature, saving the last for myself, but in fright I squeezed the trigger once too many. 4 of the shots hit their target, the others were wide, hitting the wall and the door. The sound of the shots was deafening in the small room, the smell of cordite faint behind the smell of the creature. It didn't even flinch. The bullets hit their mark. I could see the flesh wounds, heard the dull sound of the bullets impacting flesh. It looked at me for a moment and let out its familiar scream, high-pitched and undulating. At the same time, my blood felt like ice. I made a desperate sprint for the garage door. I flung it open and stepped into the dark garage, slamming the door behind me. I leaned with my back against the door as the creature struck it. The force was so great I fell to the floor. I leapt back up and turned the key in the lock. It began hammering the door with such force I was sure that the door would break from its hinges. I looked around, my eyes darting from object to object. I saw a gas can and a blowtorch. I decided to burn it, try to end this once and for all. I pressed the button on my remote to open the garage door, flung open the car door and inserted the key into the ignition and turned it. The car sprang to life. I reached for the gas can and fumbled with the screw top. My arms shaking and my fingers not obeying my commands, I poured a pool of gasoline by the door. I picked up the blowtorch and clicked the button. The blue flame seemed so bright in the darkness. I tossed it into the pool of petrol and it ignited just as the door was forced from its hinges. I leapt into the car and without even shutting the door, put it in drive and slammed my foot to the floor. In my mirror, I saw the creature stood in the doorway. The remaining fur on its rotten body was alight. It seemed not to be concerned about the flames leaping up its body. I hoped with all my heart that it would burn to death in my house. As I drove down the drive, I kept glancing in the mirror, watching as my house and all of my belongings went up in flames. I lost sight of the creature, but my whole being was praying that it was dead, and I wouldn't have to live like this anymore. Later that morning I stood on the steps of my house, the flames extinguished. I explained what had happened to the fire service, but they looked at me with disbelief. As a courtesy, they checked for animal prints around the house, but found no signs that the creature had been there at all. The insurance company would not pay out as it was concluded that I started the fire. I am now staying in a hotel far into the city and away from woodlands. I still do not know if it perished in that fire, although no body was found. I still cannot rest. I still check the windows. I am not sure how much longer I can live like this, how long I can carry on living in fear. No one will believe my story, and I have been forced to attend counseling due to me burning down my own house. I will try to write up my other encounters soon, but it takes a lot out of me to put this on paper. Thank you, and please feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it. I will be uploading new encounters daily, so subscribe to stay tuned. Until tomorrow, and don't forget, stay vigilant and stay safe.